Imagine a ship leaving the harbor with pride, carrying the hopes of an empire, only to vanish into the ice and never return. No distress call, no survivors, only silence. And a mystery that would haunt history for more than a century. This is the story of the Franklin expedition, one of the darkest maritime tragedies the world has ever known. The year was 1845. Britain ruled the seas with unmatched power. The Royal Navy stretched across the world, its sails dominating oceans from India to the Americas. But there was one frontier left unconquered, the Arctic. For centuries, explorers had dreamed of finding a northern sea route that would connect the Atlantic to the Pacific, a passage through the frozen waters of Canada's Arctic archipelago, the legendary Northwest Passage. Whoever found it would secure Britain's dominance forever. To claim that prize, the Admiralty turned to Sir John Franklin. At 59, Franklin was not young, nor was he the perfect picture of health. He was overweight, often mocked by critics as the man who ate his boots, a cruel reminder of a past expedition where he had been forced to eat leather during starvation. Yet he was a decorated officer, a veteran of wars, and a man of unbreakable determination. For Britain, Franklin was a symbol of courage and resilience. This expedition would be his chance at redemption. Two ships were chosen, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. These were not ordinary vessels. They had fought in the Napoleonic Wars and had been specially reinforced for Arctic service. Thick iron plating protected their hulls against crushing ice. Steam engines had been fitted to help them move even when the wind failed. Their decks carried 3 years' worth of supplies, thousands of preserved meats, biscuits, and barrels of fresh water. They even carried libraries and musical instruments, making life at sea bearable for officers and crew. On paper, they were invincible. A total of 129 men joined the mission: sailors, officers, engineers, and surgeons. Young men filled with dreams, some leaving behind wives and children, others chasing adventure. In May 1845, the ships departed London to great fanfare. Families cheered from the docks, bands played, and newspapers predicted that Britain was on the verge of making history. To the public, the Franklin expedition was destiny. At first, all seemed well. The Erebus and Terror crossed the Atlantic and reached Greenland, where they stopped for supplies. Franklin sent letters home, cheerful and confident. Then the ships sailed west into the Arctic waters of Baffin Bay and disappeared. For months, no word came. Then years. Britain began to worry. Families waited, clinging to hope. Newspapers demanded answers. By 1848, with still no sign of Franklin, the Admiralty launched one of the largest search operations in naval history. Dozens of ships and thousands of men were sent to comb the Arctic. They battled the same ice, storms, and darkness, many becoming trapped themselves. The Arctic seemed determined to keep its secret. Clues began to surface, but they were faint and terrifying. Inuit hunters, the native people of the Arctic, spoke of strange encounters with starving, pale men wandering across the ice. They described abandoned camps, skeletons, and ships frozen in place. When searchers pressed further, they found haunting relics. A tattered boat dragged across ice with corpses inside. Human bones gnawed and cut as though by knives. Fragments of clothing marked with naval insignia. The evidence was undeniable. The Franklin men had suffered horribly. Starvation, exhaustion, disease, and in their final desperation, perhaps even cannibalism. The very word shook Victorian England. The Admiralty refused to admit it. Britain's sailors were the pride of the empire, symbols of honor and discipline. The idea that they had eaten one another to survive was unthinkable. But the Arctic left little room for denial. The mystery only grew darker. No one knew exactly where the ships had been trapped. No one knew where Franklin himself had died. Lady Jane Franklin, John's devoted wife, spent her fortune funding private search missions long after the Admiralty gave up. For decades, expeditions continued, each one uncovering only fragments of the truth: buttons, journals, scraps of wood, bones with chilling marks. Yet the full story remained locked away beneath the ice. The Franklin expedition became a legend, a riddle of pride and tragedy. For more than a century and a half, the fate of Erebus and Terror haunted history, where they swallowed whole by the ice. Did the crew mutiny? Did Franklin die a hero, or a broken man lost in despair? No one could answer. The ships lay hidden in the Arctic's frozen graveyard, as if the sea itself refused to give them back. But history has a way of resurfacing, and the Franklin mystery, sealed in silence for 170 years, was not over yet. For generations, the Arctic guarded its secret. Sailors, explorers, scientists, all tried to uncover what truly happened to Franklin's men. But the ice swallowed ships as easily as it had swallowed Erebus and Terror. The search became a curse, drawing men deeper into danger, giving back only bones and whispers. By the 20th century, interest had shifted. The world was at war. Technology had advanced, but the Franklin expedition remained unsolved. Then, in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, archaeologists and historians returned to the Arctic with new tools: sonar, icebreakers, and the knowledge of Inuit oral history. The Inuit had always held fragments of the truth, passed down in stories, of wooden ships trapped in ice, of men dragging boats across land, of horror and starvation. For years, these stories had been dismissed by Europeans. Now, they became the key. In 2014, almost by miracle, searchers discovered the wreck of HMS Erebus in the shallow waters of Nunavut, Canada. The ship lay silent but remarkably intact, preserved by the freezing sea. The discovery was electrifying. For the first time in 170 years, one of Franklin's ghost ships had been found. 2 years later, in 2016, the second ship, HMS Terror, was discovered. It was even more astonishing, sitting upright on the seabed, its hull nearly untouched, as if waiting for someone to open the door. The discovery confirmed the Inuit had been right all along. The ships had not vanished into myth. They had been abandoned and lost to the ice. Inside, artifacts remained: boots, plates, journals, bottles, even preserved food. Each object told fragments of the story, each one a whisper from the past. Modern science filled in more gaps. Analysis of the crew's remains revealed lead poisoning, likely from the canned food. Others showed signs of tuberculosis and scurvy. Their bodies told the story of men slowly poisoned, weakened, and broken. Combined with the unforgiving Arctic, it was a death sentence. Starvation set in. Discipline collapsed. Men wandered from camp in hopeless marches across endless ice, never to return. And Sir John Franklin himself? He likely died early, sometime in 1847, before the true horror unfolded. His men carried on leaderless, desperate, and doomed. The final survivors may have turned to cannibalism, a last, grim attempt to cling to life. The pride of Britain, reduced to shadows of humanity on a frozen wasteland. The rediscovery of Erebus and Terror did more than solve a mystery. It gave closure to a story that had haunted generations. But it also forced Britain to face uncomfortable truths. The arrogance of empire, the refusal to listen to Inuit voices, and the cost of pride. Even now, divers continue to explore the wrecks, carefully retrieving artifacts from the icy tomb. Each new find brings us closer to understanding the men of the Franklin expedition, and how they lived, suffered, and died. Yet despite all we know, the full truth will never be clear. The Arctic keeps its secrets well. The story of Franklin is not just about exploration. It is about the price of ambition, the fragility of human life, and the haunting power of nature. The Arctic is not a place to be conquered. It is a place that humbles kings, captains, and empires. So when we think of Erebus and Terror, we do not just see ships lost in ice. We see men who carried the weight of an empire, who sailed into the unknown for glory, and who vanished into legend. Their story became one of the greatest maritime mysteries ever told. And even today, when the sea is calmer, when the ice has melted a little, their ghosts still linger in the frozen north. A reminder that the ocean always decides who will return, and who will be forgotten.